Hello everyone, and welcome back to Learning in Technology, the channel that helps you learn and teach better by using technology. My name is Frank, and I'm glad you're here. Welcome and thank you. Today I want to start a new short series of videos for those teachers that find themselves facing the new reality of having to teach online, or maybe you just want to incorporate some of the remote teaching tools available to help you augment your in-person classroom and engage students more. Either way, I want to help you if I can. In this series of videos, I'm going to walk through a remote teaching scenario from beginning to end. I'll create these videos and put them all together in a playlist that takes you from setting up your systems, creating your class, and then delivering quality teaching to your students. My assumption about everybody watching is that you already know how to teach and have a strong interest in sharing knowledge online. You've taught in the past and you know how to structure the content. I'm assuming you're here for some guidance on the remote delivery aspects of teaching. That said, please post in the comments if you're interested in courses on training programs and how to do training. I'd be happy to create more videos that meet those needs. For this series, we'll start this video by looking at the hardware we're going to want to have available to us. And it isn't that much: computer, sound, and camera. We'll also have to ask ourselves, what hardware do the students have? So we'll need to get our message out there, and we have to make sure that that message can be received. So this first video is about laying down that groundwork by getting the hardware in place. After that, I'll create some additional videos on setting up some software for teaching. There's plenty of options for that, but I'm going to cover that in other parts of the channel. Here, I'm just going to continue to just pretend that we're setting up our first online teaching experience and keep things refined to a few key pieces of software. We'll add to the list later on, but for now we'll keep it simple and we'll use Microsoft Teams, the whiteboard, and a couple of collaboration tools. In other videos at a later time, we'll look at more nuanced ways to make classes even more interesting by using various programs and tools. After the first two videos, we'll be at the point where we have the equipment, we have the students ready, we have the software in place, and then the question is, what's next? Process. So then I'll make a video where we'll talk about the how of teaching online. We'll examine synchronous and asynchronous delivery models, the benefits, the challenges, and most importantly, how we deliver your course using both. Of course, we need to make the experience meaningful for the students, get them learning. So we'll look at encouraging discussions, working in groups, and maintaining a connection with our students, even though we're remote. That'll give us the basics and the foundations we need to do more, which is why you should subscribe and like this video so that you don't miss out on the reviews and the demonstrations of tools and technologies that'll make learning more effective and efficient. So if this series sounds like something that'll help you or something you can recommend to others, then let's start now. We'll head into this first video and start setting up our hardware. When it comes to hardware, there's a good news and bad news. The good news is that we can get started with inexpensive equipment, limited resources, and maybe that's not just good news, maybe that's great news. And the bad news is that you can really go down a rabbit hole of expenses, lots of heavy-duty equipment that can be expensive, difficult to set up. So there'll always be a way to spend more money for better video, faster laptops, extra screens, and more. So we should be careful to make sure that we concentrate on the course materials first and then concentrate on the delivery tools. We'll go for less expensive options to get started, delivering quality content without a big cost. The three hardware components again will be computer, sound, video. Of course, in addition to the above, we're going to need some services, the internet. So when there's software, we'll talk about software and setting that up in video number 2. And for here, we'll just look at each component of the hardware. A laptop or desktop computer will be the first thing that we'll need, and any computer will do. And you can adapt to using a tablet or even a smartphone in an extreme case. That would be challenging. But currently, I'm working on getting a little Raspberry Pi set up as a teaching and learning system. Once that's done, I'll do a video on that as well. But we don't need a lot of hardware, and chances are we have a laptop or a desktop already available to us. The important element here is that you are running a system that's connected to a fast, reliable internet connection. Then we need our video. And in my case, I use a mirrorless camera attached to my laptop that acts as a webcam. This means I can move it around to show different objects in my office. I have a tripod that allows me to move it and point it at different angles. And this doesn't just work by itself with the connector that comes with the camera. You need additional software to make it work as a webcam. And I actually have a video on the channel showing how to set up your DLSR as a webcam. But the built-in video webcam that's in your system is probably going to be fine. There's also software that can turn your smartphone into a webcam, which allows you to basically use your smartphone and use it as a free-form tool that you can show objects on your desk and such. And there may be unique situations where you need to do that. Or there may be a unique situation where you're working on electronics or doing some sort of up-close handwork. That's an exception though. So generally your webcam's going to be just fine. Although if you want to see how to set up a overhead camera or how to use your smartphone as a webcam, just let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to show you how to set that up as well. But any extra cameras or software is really not required if you have that integrated webcam. In many cases when you're teaching, you'll mute the video anyways. You just share your screen and a whiteboard or slides and use your voice. So video quality doesn't have to be that high if you aren't on camera that often. We want to use the camera to connect to students, but we don't need it to be running the entire class. We do want to use it to create those personal connections, but again, we don't have to have it running the entire time. Sound is an area that I think is really important. You can see that I have in my office a Blue Yeti on a Rode arm that I can move around. For me, this is more about the YouTube recording though, rather than teaching, but I do use my boom arm mic for both. But your built-in laptop will have a microphone in it. It might be okay, but this is a case where I do recommend a little $20 add-on to your typical setup if your computer supports it. You can purchase an inexpensive Lav Mic. So these are little microphones. You can see I'm wearing one right now for about $20. And this plugs into your computer's microphone port and prevents that feedback between the microphone and the speaker. What's important here is to have your microphone port on your computer that supports that Lav Mic. If you don't have a microphone port, then you might need to get a USB audio input converter or a USB microphone, and those are a bit more expensive. They still may be worth it. But it's important to test your audio in advance to ensure that your speaker doesn't feed back into your microphone and that you have proper levels for sound. I'll cover that setup as part of the operating system and software setup in the next video, where we go into the operating system and look at sound settings. And I'll cover both Mac and Windows systems. So that's really it. Computer, video, sound. Now, of course, there are some nice to have items that you can, that'll help you with your teaching, and some that I consider pretty important, just not critical. Lighting. So lighting is quite important. In my case, my office doesn't have any windows and it's in the basement of my home. So I have two inexpensive LED lamps, a desktop and a stand-up lamp. They were quite inexpensive and very useful to ensure that I'm well lit in videos and that I can read and see things around me just a little bit better than with just the room lights. Even if your office has windows, you need to check the lighting and where you're seated to ensure that you don't have too much or too little light. You can wash out your video or you can make your video too dark, so make sure you test it in advance. A second monitor is also nice. This is a bit of a must-have for me, and it's something that I recommend if it's at all possible. I really like to be able to share the second screen to students and then use my laptop screen for controlling the classroom settings, having notes, or putting items in front of me that I don't want to share to the class. In my case, I also have a second keyboard and mouse so that I have two seats that I can work with. I can just work on my laptop, or I can swing around and work on my second monitor setup as well. They're both running off the same laptop though, and I just have them USB connected. So I just swing my chair from side to work on a desktop environment with a bigger screen, or work on my laptop environment sitting in front of me. The other thing I like is my iPad Pro with a pencil. And that allows me to go in and take notes on there, and I can also use it with Duet, which is a piece of software that lets it act as a second monitor. And that can be quite helpful as well. So my iPad Pro with a pencil, and the Duet software running, so I can run those. That's one of those things that if you have the iPad, it's handy, but I wouldn't go out and get an iPad specifically for that. So those are some additional nice to have items that I do recommend for folks. But again, I just go right back to the same thing. It's just a computer with some sort of way to have video and some sort of way to have audio. And then we're going to look at how the software can be used, and then we can teach online. But the other thing that's really important to consider in this whole picture is that we have a lot of control over our environment. We can get those resources for us. But what about our students? And this is a very critical area because we need to make sure we understand our audience if we're going to be teaching to a remote audience. And because we can't control the classroom environment like we can in a traditional classroom, this means that what we're going to have to do is do a survey or in some other way figure out what it is that our students have at home. And in many cases, they'll have exactly what we have. They'll have a computer of some sort, they'll have video of some sort, they'll have sound of some sort. Some students will be some students will be learning and hopefully teaching because we want to interact with the flipped classroom type thing, but that's another video. But what we have is we have students that might have just a smartphone. So can we teach to that? And the answer is yes. I wouldn't necessarily want to type a thesis on my smartphone, but there are ways to turn a smartphone very inexpensively into a pretty effective little computer. They're pretty powerful. And that's probably an extreme case. But we also have a lot of students that might just have a tablet, or we might have a student that does have a computer and everything at home. The challenge here is that a lot of times those students will be sharing that technology with their family. So they don't have exclusive access to the technology, and if they have siblings especially, and their sibling is in a class and we want our students to participate in our class, we may run into some issues there. So I like to send out a survey to the students to find out what hardware they have, just asking them a few questions, and I send that out by email to find out what type of internet connection they have, how high speed it is. To find out when they're going to be able to use the technology. Do they have exclusive access to it? Or is it something where an older sibling can do homework at night and a younger sibling needs to use it during the day? When I collect all that information from my students, I then look and say, okay, where am I struggling? Where do I have students that might be struggling a little more than other students? Limited access to the resources, limited resources. In extreme cases, there are nonprofit organizations that are really working hard to try to get technology to students. I'm working on that Raspberry Pi project, which is a very inexpensive way to give a computer with a webcam and some sound, connected out to students at a fairly low cost. There is a lot of recycled technology. A lot of people are taking computer equipment that they're finished with, but they're refurbishing it so that they can give it to a student, because really it's just tuning into the learning. They don't necessarily have to create content, so they don't need super powerful systems. They need to consume content. I guess the analogy that I would give you there is that a television from 1990 can show the same TV shows as a 4K television from today. Maybe the video's a little bit different, maybe the quality's a little bit different, but you're still watching the same story, still watching the same show, you're still taking the same class, you're still having the same learning, even if you have technology that's a little bit older. The other challenge there, besides getting the technology in front of them, is also to ensure that they are able to access it on the time frames that they have that, and that they have the internet connection. So there are also a lot of, depending on your area, but in my area I do know that the cable companies that support the internet in our area are doing some really great things with nonprofit organizations and of their own vocation, where they're going into neighborhoods that maybe have a little bit more of an economic disadvantage, and they're supporting the communities there by providing discounted or even free internet services to them. So, big applaud to them. So, so those are things that we want to do. We want to survey and make sure our students have that. So I hope this video was useful, that you understand the very basic hardware that you need to set up. And this is just the first video of a few. The next step is probably the one that's more interesting. Well, I think they're all interesting, otherwise I wouldn't make videos on them. But the next one is we're going to set up the software. So we're going to be a fictitious teacher who's just started, and they have all their hardware in place, this video, and now they have to set up their classroom for the very first time. And I'll go through, turning on your computer all the way to what software you need, getting your first class online, and making sure that we can start the process. So thank you very much for watching. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you feel that this video is useful to you and you want to see other tools that I expand upon in the future, please hit subscribe, because that'll also notify you or have you subscribe to the channel. There's also a bell that can give you notifications. I don't use that very much here. I mean, you can hit the bell and then you get notified of any of my videos. I think that helps the YouTube algorithm, so hit the bell. But anyways, subscribe, like, do all that stuff. More importantly though, comment below if there's an area that I can help you with online teaching, or an area where you have some questions and you're just not finding the answers out there. Just comment down below and I'll do my best to answer in the comments, and if necessary, even make a video to help you with that. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video on software setup to get that class up and running. Bye for now.